When my son Daniel died, a part of me died with him. I was 64 years old, a widow already, and the only reason I kept moving forward each day was because I thought I still had him. A son is supposed to bury his mother, not the other way around. Yet there I was, standing in the cold wind of the cemetery, clutching the sleeve of my coat to keep from collapsing as they lowered him into the ground. The days that followed were a blur. The house felt too big, too empty, the silence unbearable. Sometimes I'd catch myself setting out 2 plates at dinner, as if he might come through the door at any moment, hungry after a long day. But the chair across from me remained painfully empty. Daniel hadn't been perfect. He had made mistakes, some bigger than others, but he was my son, my blood, my reason for being. And though he didn't tell many people, he told me everything, including the fact that he had quietly built a future for me. He left me something after his death, something I didn't share with anyone, not even his wife: a house, 2 cars, and a substantial amount of money. When the lawyer explained it all, I sat there in disbelief. My son, who had struggled and fallen so many times, had left me security. He had made sure that I wouldn't spend the rest of my days in poverty or loneliness. I wept right there in the office, clutching the folder with trembling hands. But I didn't tell my daughter-in-law. Her name was Claire. She had married my son 5 years earlier, and though I tried to welcome her into the family, there was always something distant about her. She treated Daniel more like a stepping stone than a partner, her eyes always flickering toward what he could provide rather than who he was. And when he died, her grief seemed strange, performed almost. The tears came when others were watching, but when we were alone, her face hardened like stone. I told myself it was just her way of coping. People grieve differently after all. But then came the questions. The endless questions. "Did Daniel leave you anything?" she asked, just 2 days after the funeral. Her tone careful, rehearsed. "You lived with him for so long, maybe he wanted you to be comfortable." The words chilled me. She wasn't asking out of concern. She was digging. I shook my head, forcing a small smile. "No, dear, he didn't leave me anything. I'll be fine." Her eyes narrowed slightly, as if she didn't believe me. And maybe she didn't. But she dropped the subject for a while. Weeks passed. I kept the secret close to my chest, guarding it like a fragile flame. That house, those cars, the money, it wasn't about greed. It was about what my son had entrusted to me. It was his way of saying, "Mom, I couldn't protect you when I was alive, but I'll protect you when I'm gone." I wasn't going to let anyone taint that. But Claire was relentless. Every time we spoke, she circled back. "Are you sure Daniel didn't leave anything behind? Not even an old account? Maybe we should check together." I knew what she wanted, and I knew deep down that if she discovered the truth, she would strip it away from me without hesitation. Then one afternoon I caught her in Daniel's old room, rummaging through drawers and files. When I asked what she was doing, she gave me a cold smile. "Just looking for photos, for memories." But the papers in her hand weren't photos. They were bank statements. I snatched them away, my heart pounding. Her eyes met mine, hard and sharp. And in that moment I understood she wasn't just curious, she was hunting. Hunting for what my son had left behind. That night I locked everything away in a safe, and I swore to myself that I would guard Daniel's gift with my life. But little did I know the secret I carried was not just a shield. It would become a weapon. A weapon in a battle I never expected to fight, one that would reveal truths about my family I wasn't ready to face. The weeks after catching Claire rifling through Daniel's belongings were some of the most uneasy of my life. Every time I looked at her, I felt a chill run down my spine. She had a way of smiling with her lips, while her eyes remained cold, calculating. It was the same smile she had worn at the funeral reception when she placed her hand on my shoulder and whispered, "We'll get through this together." Back then I had wanted to believe her. Now I knew better. I avoided her as much as possible, keeping my conversations short and polite. But she wasn't easily deterred. She began dropping by the house more often, uninvited, with the excuse of wanting to go through Daniel's things. At first I let her, after all, they had been married. She had a right to some of his belongings. But then I noticed she wasn't looking for keepsakes. She wasn't picking out old photographs or the watch he used to wear. She was scouring the house like a detective, searching for something specific. One afternoon I caught her standing in front of my bedroom door, her hand on the knob. My safe was in that room. My heart nearly stopped. Looking for something, I asked sharply. She turned startled and plastered on a smile. Oh, I was just looking for the bathroom. The bathroom was downstairs. That night, I sat at my kitchen table with Daniel's folders spread out before me. The deeds, the car titles, the account information. I traced his signature with trembling fingers. What did you see in her, Daniel? I whispered into the empty room. Why couldn't you see what I see now? I remembered the way he used to defend her. She's just stressed, Mom. She's ambitious, she wants more out of life. I love that about her. I had bitten my tongue more times than I could count, not wanting to drive a wedge between us. But now with him gone, the truth was all I had left, and it was ugly. Then came the phone call. Claire's voice on the other end, syrupy sweet. I was thinking maybe we should go see Daniel's lawyer together, just to make sure there aren't any loose ends. My stomach turned. There's no need, I said quickly. The lawyer already explained everything. A pause. Did he? Her tone shifted sharp as a blade. And what exactly did he explain to you? I hung up the phone before I could answer. The pressure mounted. Claire began showing up with excuses, groceries she thought I might need, or dinner she didn't want me to eat alone. Each time her eyes swept over the room like a thief mapping an escape route. I started keeping the safe locked at all times and slept with the key tucked into my nightgown. I couldn't trust her, not for a second, but secrets have a way of eating at you. At night, when the house was dark and the world was quiet, doubt crept in. Was I wrong to keep Daniel's gift hidden? Should I have told Claire from the beginning, risked her anger but avoided this silent war? Yet every time I considered it, I remembered the look in her eyes when I caught her with those bank statements, hungry, greedy, merciless. No, I couldn't give her what Daniel had meant for me. Then something happened that shook me even deeper. One evening as I watered the garden, a neighbor stopped by. Mrs. Harris, a kind woman who had known Daniel since he was a boy. She lowered her voice as she leaned against the fence. I don't mean to pry, but Claire's been talking around the neighborhood, asking questions about Daniel's finances. She said she's sure he left something behind and that you're keeping it from her. My blood ran cold. Claire wasn't just searching quietly anymore, she was spreading poison, turning suspicion into gossip. That night I couldn't sleep. I paced the house, Daniel's words echoing in my mind. Just days before his accident, he had hugged me and said, Mom, no matter what happens, I want you to be safe. At the time, I thought it was just one of those tender moments sons sometimes have with their mothers. But now I realized he must have known. Known what Claire was capable of. Known she would try to take everything, that's why he left it all to me. But knowing didn't make the burden lighter. It made it heavier. Because every secret carries a cost, and mine was about to come due. The storm finally broke on a Sunday afternoon. I was in the living room folding laundry when the doorbell rang. When I opened the door, Claire stood there, her arms crossed, her expression stripped of all pretense. Gone was the sugary smile, the fake sympathy. What stood before me was the real Claire, hard, determined, unyielding. We need to talk, she said, stepping past me without waiting for an invitation. I closed the door slowly, my hands trembling against the wood. About what? She spun on her heel, her eyes flashing. Don't play dumb with me. I know Daniel left you something. A house, money, something. He wouldn't leave me with nothing. Her voice dripped with accusation as if she were the one who had been wronged. I felt heat rising in my chest. He left what he chose to leave. And if he wanted you to have it, he would have put your name on it. He didn't. Her face twisted in fury. You think you can keep it all for yourself? You think I'll just walk away and let you steal what's mine? Yours, I hissed. Daniel worked for it, he built it. And he left it to me, not you. For a moment, silence hung between us, sharp and dangerous. Then she laughed, low and bitter. Do you really think anyone will believe you? An old woman hiding assets. All I have to do is say you manipulated him. That you forced him to cut me out. Who do you think the court will side with? Her words landed like blows. I gripped the edge of the table to steady myself. Go ahead, I whispered. Take it to court. But know this, Daniel trusted me. He saw you for who you are, even if it took him too long. That's why he left it with me. Her eyes narrowed, and for the first time I saw something flicker there, not confidence but doubt. She left soon after, slamming the door behind her so hard the windows rattled. I sank into a chair, shaking from head to toe. The battle lines had been drawn. She wasn't going to stop. The next weeks were a blur of anxiety. Letters arrived, formal ones from lawyers accusing me of hiding marital assets. I had to find an attorney of my own, someone who could protect me. Sitting in that office, reliving Daniel's death and explaining why I had kept his will private, felt like tearing my heart open all over again. But I told the truth. Every painful, ugly detail. My lawyer, a calm man with silver hair, tapped the papers on his desk. "The will is airtight. Your son left this to you explicitly. His wife has no legal claim." "But she won't stop," I whispered. "You don't know her like I do." And I was right. Claire escalated quickly. She showed up at church, whispering behind my back, painting herself as the grieving widow whose cruel mother-in-law had stolen her inheritance. Some neighbors believed her. Others looked at me with pity, as though I were clinging to wealth out of spite. The isolation was unbearable. Then came the night I found my mailbox pried open, the contents scattered across the lawn. Bills, letters, even Daniel's old birthday cards lay trampled in the dirt. My safe place, my home, no longer felt secure. I sat on the porch steps, clutching the torn envelopes, and wept. Not for the money, not for the cars, not even for the house. I wept because my son was gone, and all I had left of him was being turned into a weapon in a war I never wanted. But grief, I realized, can harden into something else. Something sharper. That night I unlocked the safe and spread Daniel's documents across the table. I traced his signature once more, steadying my breath. "If she wants a fight," I whispered into the silence, "then she'll get one. Because this wasn't just about property anymore. This was about my son's final gift, his last act of love. And I would burn every bridge before I let anyone, especially Claire, take that from me." The court date came faster than I could prepare myself for. Weeks of sleepless nights, endless meetings with my lawyer, and the gnawing dread of facing Claire in public left me exhausted before the battle even began. Still, I dressed carefully that morning. Black dress, pearl necklace Daniel had given me years ago, hair pulled back tight. If I was going to stand before a judge, I would not appear weak. When I entered the courtroom, Claire was already there. She looked immaculate, draped in expensive clothes she could hardly afford, her face painted with grief like a mask. But her eyes, those eyes gave her away. Cold, sharp, waiting for the kill. She didn't look at me as the proceedings began. Instead, she stared straight ahead, her lawyer doing most of the talking. They painted me as manipulative, controlling. Said I had taken advantage of Daniel's grief over his father's death, that I'd convinced him to leave everything to me, while cutting his young wife out. The words were poison, and though I knew they were lies, hearing them spoken aloud cut me deeply. When it was my turn, my lawyer stood calm and composed and laid out the facts. The will was clear, airtight. The property deeds, the car titles, the accounts, all listed my name. Daniel had made his choice deliberately. Then came the part I dreaded, when I had to take the stand. I sat there, the weight of the entire courtroom pressing down on me, and told my story. I spoke of Daniel not as a saint, not as a perfect man, but as my son. I described how he worked, how he planned, how he came to me in confidence before his death. And then, voice shaking, I admitted the hardest truth of all. "I didn't tell her," I said quietly. "I didn't tell Claire because I knew what she would do. Daniel knew it too. That's why he entrusted it to me. Not out of spite, not out of cruelty, but out of love. He wanted me safe." The silence afterward was suffocating. Claire's lawyer tried to rattle me, throwing questions like daggers. "Isn't it true you've always disapproved of your daughter-in-law? Isn't it true you resented her?" "Yes," I answered honestly, my throat raw. "I resented her greed. I resented how she looked at my son like he was a means to an end. And I was right. Because here we are with her trying to take what was never hers." A murmur ran through the courtroom. For the first time, Claire's mask cracked. Her jaw clenched, her fist tightening in her lap. The hearing stretched for hours, but in the end, the verdict was clear. The judge ruled in my favor. Daniel's will stood untouched, every asset remaining in my name. I should have felt triumph. Instead, all I felt was a hollow ache. Claire stormed out before the session even ended, her heels striking the floor like gunshots. I sat in the emptying courtroom staring at the wooden bench before me, trying to breathe through the swirl of emotions, relief, vindication, and sorrow deeper than I could carry. That night the house was quiet again. Too quiet. I wandered from room to room, touching the walls, the furniture, the photographs. Daniel's laughter seemed to echo faintly, a memory that never left these halls. I had won the battle, yes, but I had lost so much more. Weeks later I saw Claire one last time. She appeared on my doorstep, eyes red but burning with something darker than grief. "You think you've won?" she hissed. "Enjoy it while you can. You're old. You don't have many years left. And when you're gone, it'll all come to me anyway." I looked at her for a long moment, then closed the door without a word. Because I had already made arrangements. The papers were signed. When I was gone, everything Daniel left me would bypass her completely. It would go to causes he cared about, to scholarships for children who dreamed of becoming something more, to shelters that gave people a second chance. That was the legacy he deserved, not her greed. I sat at my desk, sealing the envelope with shaking hands, and felt something shift inside me. Revenge hadn't been my goal, but justice for Daniel's love, his trust, his life that I had achieved. The months after the trial felt like stepping out of a storm into air that was still heavy with rain. I was free from Claire's claws, but the wounds she left behind still throbbed. Neighbors whispered, some pitying, some judgmental, as if I had stolen from her instead of defending what was rightfully mine. I carried myself with quiet dignity, but inside I was often torn open by guilt and sorrow. Late at night, I would sit in Daniel's old room, staring at the boxes of his belongings. I would run my fingers over the spines of his books, trace the lines of his handwriting on notes he had left scattered in drawers. He had been my baby, my only child. And in my darkest hours, I asked myself whether I had failed him by letting someone like Claire into his life. Whether I could have saved him from her if only I had been stronger. But then I would remember his last gift. The house, the cars, the money. It wasn't about possessions. It was his way of protecting me, of giving me a shield when he couldn't be here. It was love made tangible, and no amount of Claire's greed could take that away. One evening, as the sun dipped low and the sky blazed orange, I took out the envelope I had sealed after the trial. My final decision. Inside were documents ensuring that everything Daniel had left me would be redirected when my time came. Scholarships for underprivileged students, donations to community shelters, a small trust fund in the name of his favorite teacher, who had once told him he was capable of greatness. I imagined Daniel's smile, the pride in his eyes, if he could see that his legacy would live on, not in greed or court battles but in opportunities for those who needed them most. That thought gave me peace. As for Claire, she drifted further into the distance. Occasionally I'd hear whispers about her moving apartments, chasing new relationships, trying and failing to hold on to the kind of life she thought she deserved. Every time I heard her name, I felt less anger and more pity. She had built her life on shallow ground, and eventually it all crumbled beneath her. I, on the other hand, found strength in quiet resilience. With each passing season I learned to smile again, to laugh at small joys, to feel the warmth of the sun, without the shadow of betrayal clinging to me. Grief never truly leaves, but it softens, reshapes itself into something you can carry without breaking. When I share this story now, I don't tell it with bitterness, though the betrayal still stings when I think of it. I tell it because it carries a lesson I want others to hold on to. Family is not always defined by blood, nor by the vows people speak at altars. It is defined by love, loyalty, and sacrifice. My son understood that, even if too late, and I honor him by living that truth every day. If you've listened this far, thank you. If my story has touched you, I ask you to please like, share, and subscribe. It helps me know that I'm not alone, that others have felt these same wounds and carried them too. Leave a comment if you've ever faced betrayal from those closest to you, and tell me how you found your strength again. Sometimes the hardest stories are the ones that bring us together, because in the end, betrayal doesn't have the final word. Love does. Legacy does. And the courage to rise from ashes, that is what endures.